My phone didn't just slip. It slid out of my fingers like it was trying to escape the truth, hit the tile, and skittered beneath the kitchen chair. The screen stayed lit, bright as noon, and on it was a photograph I will never forget. My daughter, Naomi Carter, stood in a white dress under a live oak strung with fairy lights. Next to her was a man I had been introduced to twice in passing, his hand around her waist like he'd known her all her life. Behind them, just out of focus, stood his parents, their smiles calm and satisfied, while a minister lifted a hand in blessing. The caption read, "Just us, just right, 614, family complete, family complete." I called immediately. The first call rang to voicemail, the second did the same. On the third, Naomi picked up and whispered, "Mama, I can't talk long." "Did you get married?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My voice had that thin, reedy sound I don't recognize, the one it gets when I'm trying not to cry. "Yeah," she said, like she was agreeing to extra ice in her tea. "Yesterday." Why wasn't I there? There was the smallest sigh on the line. We wanted it simple. Miles's parents were already hosting something for him. It worked out. "We'll talk later, okay?" The call ended. The kitchen went quiet in that way only houses in New Orleans can go quiet, like even the cicadas held their breath. My name is Evelyn Rose Carter. I'm 68 years old, born in the Treme, moved to Gentilly after I married the love of my youth, and I believed down to my bones that family was the one thing that never forgot you. I raised Naomi by myself after my husband, Daniel, died from a stroke the summer she turned 8. I worked day shifts at LaSalle Laundry off Clybourne, picked up evening hours cleaning rentals in the Marigny, and for years I hemmed gowns for a seamstress in the Garden District, hand-stitching lace so fine I could barely see it at night. I saved for Naomi's school uniforms, her clarinet lessons, her college fund. I saved for a wedding one day, hers, not mine. I pictured escorting her down an aisle of our choosing, breathing in flowers we'd arranged together, holding her hand while she trembled joyful tears onto my wrist. What do you do when the child you carried decides you are not part of the picture? I sat at my small Formica table with the quiet ticking clock and scrolled through every photo in that post. I recognized the courtyard, an uptown private club with brickwork and wisteria that blooms too early. I recognized the way Naomi's smile tries to be careful when she is unsure. I recognized nothing else. Not the man's tuxedo, sleek and dear. Not the way his mother held my daughter's bouquet at an angle that said mine. Not the way the caption claimed completeness, as if I were an unfinished edge that had finally been trimmed. I put down the phone and went looking for myself in the house. In the hallway frames, there were school pictures, teeth too big for faces, natal day crowns, cap and gown. In Naomi's childhood room, there was a poster of the St. Aug Marching 100 she taped up when she was 12. There were the marks on the doorframe where I measured her height, dates written in my neat grocery list hand. There was a photo of Daniel, smiling with that proud squint, holding Naomi on his shoulders on the lakefront, her hair barrettes catching sun. I pressed my thumb to the glass over his face and asked him a question I never thought I would ask. What am I supposed to do now? The memories came slow at first, then in a flood so strong I had to sit. The winter Naomi caught bronchitis and I slept in a chair by her bed 3 nights straight, waking to count her breaths. The year she begged for a purple dress for the spring dance, and I said we'd find a way. So I took on an extra building to clean out in Metairie and sewed until my fingers blistered. Her sweet 16 at a VFW hall in Mid-City. Food for 100 I cooked myself, a cake bigger than her head, and the dance she saved for me. "Mama, we gotta do our song," she said, tugging my hand. There was a promise she made afterward, breathless and solemn. "When I marry, you'll stand right next to me." Back then, promises were holy things we made in kitchens and kept for life. When Naomi went to college, Tulane, on scholarships and my savings and the grace of God, the world got larger. Her papers were about markets and mergers. My talk was of hours and overtime. She joined clubs where they discussed internships in boardrooms I'd never see. She started dating men with last names sharp as pressed collars. The first time she introduced me to Miles LeBlanc, he shook my hand soft and glanced past my small house like it was a stage set in need of a change. I cooked him red beans thick as cement and cornbread with the crust just right. He told me everything was nice, which is a word that always feels like a pat on the head. Naomi, nervous, laughed too high and explained things that didn't need explaining. Why my couch faced the window, why the TV was small, why I kept Daniel's tool chest under the court port. "We don't have a garage," she told him, as if he had asked. He hadn't. He was already looking at his phone. When I met his parents, Charles and Meredith LeBlanc, I learned how to read a second language, the grammar of polite erasure. They were kind in a way that kept me at arm's length. Meredith complimented my blouse and then suggested a boutique in Uptown where they'll help you find pieces that suit you. Charles asked whether Naomi liked the Uptown condo better than living way out in Gentilly, the word out stretched like taffy. At dinner, I talked about the laundry, how the new machines didn't rinse as clean, how the heat makes the air shimmer back there. Meredith blinked, then asked Naomi about her firm's expansion and turned away. Naomi's cheeks burned. On the ride home, she said, "Mama, sometimes you overshare." The distance didn't open all at once. It widened by degrees, like the Mississippi at certain bends. First, Naomi visited less. Then I was asked to call before stopping by. Then Sundays, the ones we kept for gumbo and catching up, were complicated. When holiday plans came, they revolved around the LeBlanc's calendar, their traditions, their church. "We'll do something with you after," Naomi would say. After never came. In February, Naomi mentioned marriage in a voice like she was testing the water with her toe. "Something small," she said. I nodded and told her I'd help with whatever she needed. "We'll see," she answered, already glancing at her email. By May, she was hard to reach. When we did talk, she gave me summaries like a newsletter. Work good, busy, miles traveling, dinner with friends. I asked gently about dates. She said gently there was nothing firm. When I brought up dresses, she said, "I don't know if I'll wear white." When I asked who would stand with her, she said, "We're not doing all that." In the quiet after those calls, I told myself I was imagining a slight. Mothers are good at telling themselves they're being silly. On the Tuesday I used to meet Naomi for cafe au lait at a corner shop in Mid-City, I made my coffee at home and opened my phone. The first thing I saw was the picture. I didn't cry then. I've learned that grief has hours of operation, and it had not opened for business yet. I called, I asked, I heard that thin, "We'll talk later," and then I went about my day like you do when a hurricane is 4 days out and the sky is still bright. That night, the winds arrived. I lay awake and replayed 28 years in my head until the film burned through. The next morning, I set my coffee in front of me, took out a spiral notebook, and wrote in block letters across the top of a blank page, "Plan for Evelyn." It looked strange. My lists are usually titled groceries or bills or Naomi. But the paper waited, and so did I, pen poised above a life. I wrote 3 lines. Find a place to live that is for me. Put my money where my dignity is. Decide what boundary looks like when you love someone who doesn't see you. I started with number 1. I called my neighbor from when we lived in Tremay, Miss Gertie, who moved last year to a residence in Metairie where everyone says she got younger by 10 years. "Baby, I dance on Thursdays," she said, laughing. "Come see. They got a garden you're gonna want to wake up to." I took the bus to Bayou Oaks and walked into a lobby that smelled like lemon and fresh paint. The place was called Cypress Grove at Bayou Oaks, 1-bedroom apartments with little balconies, a chapel with an open door, a crafting room with sunlight like honey. A smiling woman named Patrice gave me a tour. On the lawn out back, 3 women were gossiping under a cypress tree like they'd been doing it since school. "We do yoga in chairs," Patrice said, "and we go to the farmer's market on Saturdays. Do you crochet?" I told her I hemmed gowns for half my life. "Then you'll lead the sewing circle," she said, like it was already decided. "How soon could someone move in?" I asked, not sure if I was really asking. "If the paperwork's in order, we can make it 2 weeks," she said. "There's a balcony facing the camellias. Nobody stays sad long in that one." I laughed, and it felt like the first honest sound I'd made in days. Show me. By lunchtime, I had a packet as thick as a hymn book and a heart that had stopped dragging its feet. I took the bus back, got off at Elysian Fields, and walked into my bank. My banker, Mr. Dupree, has known me since Naomi started high school. He's the kind of man who calls you Miss Evelyn and means it. "How can I help?" he asked. "I want to review everything," I said. "All of it. I'm making some changes." We sat side by side and looked at numbers I had always treated like strangers. There was my savings from LaSalle. There was the emergency fund I kept in case Naomi needed help with tuition, then rent, then a car repair. There was also an account Naomi didn't know about, the one I started when she turned 18, where I put money every time I hemmed a dress or baked extra pralines for a neighbor's party. It was meant to be a surprise for her wedding, a start-your-life gift. I had dreamed of the day I'd place that book in her hand. I had rehearsed the speech. I closed my eyes and let that imagined day pass. Then I told Mr. Dupree, I need to reorganize. I won't be handing this over like I planned. He nodded like men nod in rooms when women tell the truth. Would you like options that earn monthly income, he asked, so you can live off the interest instead of the principal? Yes, I said. The word felt like the beginning of a door opening. I left with a folder, an appointment with a notary, and a list of documents I needed. On my walk home, I stopped at a storefront sign that read Nguyen and Roche, attorneys. I know about wills from watching our elders learn the hard way. I made an appointment with Miss Rochelle Nguyen to update mine. At home, I pulled out a suitcase and started with the easy part, cookbooks. I took the ones that held my mother's handwriting and left the rest. I filled a box with Naomi's school projects, the popsicle stick bridge, the medal from the district band competition, the first essay where she wrote, I love my city. I labeled it Naomi Keep, taped it closed, and set it by the door. I waited all that day for Naomi to call. She didn't. I waited the next day. On the third, she answered on the first ring. Mama, she said quickly, how are you? Let me call you tonight. Miles's parents invited us to a thing. Baby, I interrupted, I'm fine. I just need to ask you one thing. Did you want me there? There was a long, thin quiet. Finally, she said, it was easier this way. Easier how? Easier than watching the woman who carried you stand beside you while your name changes? Easier than making room for the hands that fed you to tie the ribbon on your bouquet? I see, I said, because there wasn't any other sentence that could fit in my mouth. That night, I didn't pray for Naomi to understand. I prayed for the courage to honor what I understood. 2 days later, I met with Miss Nguyen. We went through the house deed, the car title, the accounts Mr. Dupree had helped me restructure. Do you want to keep the house? She asked gently. I looked at the cracked driveway Daniel patched himself, the azalea bush Naomi planted in 4th grade. I looked at the door that had received every version of my daughter over the years, wet and laughing, shouting and sorry, tired and hungry, grown and distant. No, I said, I want to sell it while it's still mine to sell. And for your will? I want half to go to a scholarship fund for single mothers in Orleans Parish. The other half to Naomi, but with a condition. Miss Nguyen waited. She has to write a letter, not to beg, not to justify. A letter where she says what she did and why. She can give it to you after I'm gone. You can put it in the file. I may never read it, but she'll have to set it down in ink. Miss Nguyen's eyes softened. We can do that, she said. That afternoon, I made beignets I didn't feel like eating and brewed coffee too strong. Then I called a realtor Miss Gertie had used. Houses in Gentilly are moving fast, he said. If you're serious, we can list Monday. I'm serious, I said, and surprised myself with how steady it sounded. On Saturday, I opened the hall closet and pulled Naomi's prom dress from its garment bag, the purple one I stitched until 2 a.m. while the radio played oldies and the house smelled like hairspray and excitement. I held it up to the light and saw every stitch. I folded it carefully and placed it in the Naomi Keep box. Beside it, I set a framed photo of our little family, me, Daniel, and tiny Naomi in a Saints jersey, gap-toothed and fierce. I put tape over the glass so it wouldn't crack. I wrote the address of Naomi's condo on the label, and when I pressed the Sharpie down for the last stroke of the last digit, a line settled in my spirit like the tide going slack. I can love my child and save myself. The next morning, Naomi called with the voice people use when they want to smooth something over. "Mama, we want to take you to brunch Sunday. We found a place you'll love." I looked at my calendar. I had circled Sunday already. Cypress Grove had a shuttle going to City Park for the art museum and beignets. I signed my name in the margin like a teenager signing a yearbook. "I've got plans," I said. A pause. "With who?" "Friends," I answered, and let the word enjoy itself in the kitchen air. "Another day." It was the first time in her life Naomi had to pencil me in. On Monday at 9 sharp, the for sale sign went up. At noon, I handed the keys to a crew that would refinish the floors. At 5, I took one last loop through the rooms, told Daniel I'd see him in the next house, and locked the door with a hand that did not shake. By Friday, I had a move-in date at Cypress Grove, a buyer from my house, and a pie cooling on the counter from Miss Gertie because gratitude tastes better when it's sugared. That evening, as the sun bent low over the canal, my phone rang. "Mama," Naomi said, breathless, "Mr. Harris next door told me your house has a sign in the yard. Are you moving?" "Yes." "To where?" "To a place that suits me." "Why didn't you tell me?" I sat on the stair and ran my thumb along a groove Daniel's boots had worn. "I'm learning to make decisions that don't begin with you," I said slowly. There are moments when the floor plan of a relationship redraws itself. You can feel the walls shift, the doors move. Naomi was quiet a long time. Finally, she said small, "Are you mad at me?" "I'm clear with me," I answered, and for the first time since she was born, I realized those are not the same thing. I moved into Cypress Grove on a Wednesday afternoon when the sky stretched high and blue above the cypresses and the parking lot radiated heat like a skillet. Patrice met me at the curb, hugged me as if I were a cousin she liked, and handed me a key on a lanyard that said, "Welcome home." I laughed, and the sound didn't bounce around like it used to in my old house. It landed soft and stayed. My apartment smelled new, like fresh lumber and lemon. There was a bedroom with a window that framed a sliver of garden, a kitchenette with exactly the right number of cabinets, and a living area with a sliding door out to a little balcony. Beyond the rail, camellias leaned in like they had gossip. I set my one suitcase on the bed and exhaled a breath that had been stuck under my ribs for years. That first night, I unpacked 3 things: the photo of Daniel and Naomi on the lakefront, my mother's cast iron skillet, and a small plant Naomi gave me when she got her first internship. It had grown leggy and stubborn like us. I placed the photo on the bookshelf, set the skillet on the stove like a declaration, and tucked the plant near the balcony door where the light was generous. Then I stood in the center of that small room and listened to the quiet as if it were music I could finally hear. The days at Cypress Grove had a rhythm that surprised me with how quickly it fit. In the mornings, I had coffee on the balcony while the grounds crew watered the hibiscus. At 9, there was chair yoga in a bright room where I learned to stretch parts of me I thought were finished. At 11, a few of us walked to the small chapel down the hall to say prayers for the people we used to be. After lunch, I visited the sewing room, a miracle of light and tidy drawers. The first time I threaded a machine there, the room exhaled like it was glad to have me. I made friends in the easy way children do when there are swings nearby. Miss Odette ran the sewing circle like a ship, kind but exacting, and insisted I teach a hymn class. "These hands know something," she said, patting mine. Mr. Lionel played dominoes like a man with secrets and told stories in the afternoons about his time working the river. Miss Thelma took me under her wing and explained which bingo caller had a lucky voice and which one made the numbers come out stubborn. On Thursday nights, Mr. Lionel taught a little Zydeco in the common room. We laughed ourselves cross-eyed, trying to turn without stepping on each other. I slept after like I had shoveled a yard of mulch, honest tired. I kept my phone on, but I turned off that setting where it pops up every post Naomi made. I couldn't digest her curated happiness on demand anymore. I started checking my voicemail only after breakfast. The first few days, there were 3 messages from Naomi, short, clipped, informative. "We picked out a couch. Work's busy. Are you okay?" I texted back each time, "I'm fine. New place is good." On the 4th day, she called while I was in the garden, hands in soil, planting marigolds in a box along the fence. "Mama," she said without preamble, "Miles and I are coming to see you Saturday. We need to know you're safe." The old part of me, the hostess part, the always ready part, flared up like a knee you've banged too many times. "Saturday I have plans," I said. "The shuttle's taking us to the French market in the river. I already put my name down." "We'll come Sunday then," she said quickly, relief slipping into her voice. "What time is good?" "Afternoons are for napping around here, for poor souls like me who never learned to nap." "A 2," I said. "Patrice will sign you in." They arrived right on time, dressed like people who have somewhere to be afterward. Miles wore that permanent crispness certain men never wrinkle. Naomi wore a white blouse I had never seen, and earrings I had. They looked around the lobby like they were deciding whether to approve of it. I led them to the small lounge with the big windows. We sat. "Mama," Naomi said, and her voice trembled at the edges, "why did you move without telling me?" "I didn't move without telling you," I said. "I moved without asking." Miles folded his hands and leaned forward like a negotiation was due. "That is, perhaps, the only move I am not susceptible to." "We were surprised," he said. "We would have helped you pick a place." "I picked what I wanted," I said, and let it sit. Miles looked at Naomi in that way men do when they want the woman to fix it. She cleared her throat. "We also wanted to bring you something," she said, opening a bag. Out came a scented candle, a coffee table book of New Orleans courtyards, and a delicate scarf. "We thought you'd like these for your new home." The things were beautiful. They were also bandages on a wound made by a knife they had called practical. "Thank you," I said. "They're lovely." "We thought," Naomi continued, "maybe we could, start fresh." For a second, I saw her at 5 years old, standing on a chair to help me stir a cake and snapping an egg too hard so the shells tumbled in. "We can start again, Mama," she declared then, and we had. We simply cracked another egg. "This isn't cake," I said softly, and the sentence sounded strange, even to me. "We can't pretend this never happened." Naomi nodded, eyes shining. "I know, I don't know how to fix it." "You can't," I said, not unkindly, "but you can try to build something new." Miles shifted, impatient without meaning to be. "What does something new look like?" he asked. "It looks like including me because I am your people," I answered. "Not because it will look good in a photo or because you feel obligated. It looks like asking me about my life and listening to the answer. It looks like letting me say no to things without punishing me for doing so. It looks like you saying out loud what you did without explaining it away or making me mother your feelings about your choices." Miles's parents, Naomi started, and then stopped, because right there in that sentence was the old shape of our trouble. "I'm not Miles's parents," I said. "I am Naomi's mother." She flinched. Miles looked out the window at the camellias like they might weigh in with a ruling. "We were trying to make things easy," he said after a moment. "The guest list would have been complicated." "The easiest thing," I said, "was to call your mother and say, 'We want you there.' The rest we could have handled." No one spoke for a while. Patrice passed by and waved. I waved back. It felt like two parts of my life acknowledging each other politely. When they stood to leave, Naomi hugged me long. "Can we come back next week?" she asked against my shoulder. "Call and ask," I said, and smiled so she could hear it. "I have dominoes on Tuesdays, sewing Wednesdays, dancing Thursdays. I'm busy now." The joke was gentle. The boundary was not. They did come back, twice in the next month. The first time they brought takeout and real questions about the people here. I told them about Mr. Lionel's stories, Miss Odette's rules, and the way the oak outside my balcony holds the sunset like it's keeping it for me. Naomi listened without interrupting. Miles tried. When he asked about my finances again, whether this place was sustainable, I told him Mr. Dupree and I had it in hand. He nodded like a man who has met a test he didn't know he was taking. In that month, I also packed Naomi keep boxes and rented a small storage unit. I left the key and the code for her with Patrice. Naomi picked them up on a Saturday and texted a heart. No words, just the shape of one. It did not undo anything. It did not need to. I met with Miss Nguyen to sign the final will papers. She slid me a copy of the clause I requested. Naomi would receive her portion with a letter to accompany it. "She doesn't have to send it to you," Miss Nguyen reminded me. "Just to the file." "I know," I said, and picturing words typed in black on white gave me a comfort that surprised me. Maybe we all deserve a last chance to tell the truth, even if the only witness is a folder. One Wednesday afternoon, I was sitting under the camellias with Miss Delma, talking about the taste of the beignets at different cafes like it was science, when my phone lit up. The name on the screen made me sit up straighter. Meredith LeBlanc. I answered, because I am not afraid of women like her anymore. "Evelyn," she said, in that clipped, polite voice the uptown women keep in a silver box. "I suggested to Naomi that I call." I waited. "I understand there's been tension." She gave the word 2 syllables, ten and shun. "Charles and I only wanted what was easiest. You know weddings can become messy." "Messy is life," I said, and smiled so it wouldn't sound like a slap. I would have loved to help shoulder messy. She didn't respond to that. "We would like to host a dinner, just the 4 of us, to reset." If you have not spent a lifetime being left out of rooms, you might not know the power of choosing which door you walk through. "Thank you," I said. "That's kind." "Not yet." A beat. "May I ask why?" "Because I asked my daughter to learn my language before we start speaking yours." I could hear her recalibrating through the line, which is a fancy way of saying she went quiet and counted to 5. "Very well," she said finally. "I hope we'll meet again soon." "I hope so too," I answered, and meant it. Cypress Grove gave me more than a new address. It gave me a place where my name wasn't attached to anyone else's. When I raised my hand in the sewing circle and said, "I can show you that hem faster," women twice my age and half it leaned in. When I carried a tray in the dining room, young staff called me Miss Evelyn and asked what I was making. When I lingered in the chapel, the man who tended the candles nodded without question. No one here needed me to be smaller so they could be large in their own home. One evening after Zydeco, sweaty, happy, heart beating like a second line, I sat on the edge of my bed to catch my breath. My phone vibrated. Naomi again. "Mama," she said, "we're hosting a housewarming next month. Small, really small, not a spectacle." I wrote out the list. I wrote your name first. I looked at the picture of Daniel on my bookshelf, at his proud squint. "I'll come if I can," I said. "Text me the date." "It would mean a lot," she said, "to me." I heard it that time, the "to me." Not to the picture, not to Miles, to me. When the date landed on a Thursday, I told her I had dancing. "I'll come afterward," I said. "I'll be the one with the good footwork." She laughed, and there it was, the sound of pebbles in a jar, the one I used to collect just to hear her pour them from hand to hand. The night of the housewarming, I arrived with a lemon chess pie still warm and my own name in my mouth, like a coin I finally decided to spend. Their condo was beautiful, windows wide, furniture that looked like adults lived there. Miles's parents were there, of course, looking like the room had been built around them. When Meredith saw me, something like surprise and something like relief flashed across her face. "Evelyn," she said, taking both my hands, which is a thing women do when they are trying to show connection. "I'm glad you came." "Me too," I said, and set the pie on the counter like planting a flag. Through the evening, people rotated around me in waves. Naomi flitted, busy as a bride, but she stopped every 10 minutes to touch my shoulder. "You okay? Need anything?" I didn't, and I told her so, and that was its own kind of miracle. At one point, Miles's father joined me by the window. "I've heard good things about your building," he said. "A friend's mother is looking." "It's good," I said simply, "especially if you like hearing your own thoughts." He smiled. Not everyone does. I let the sentence sit. On my way out, Naomi walked me to the elevator. "How was it?" she asked, the way little Naomi used to ask after I tasted her first attempts at cornbread. "It was fine," I said, and meant it. "You looked happy." "I am," she said. Then she fidgeted with the strap of her shoe, looked up, and blurted, "Mama, I'm sorry." I waited. There are apologies that are decorations, and there are apologies that are doors. "For what?" I asked, gently forcing the lock. "For not inviting you," she said, tears making her mascara brave. "For choosing what was easiest for everyone else and hardest for you. For pretending it didn't matter because I didn't want to face what it meant." "And what does it mean?" I asked, not letting her put the key down yet. "It means I hurt you," she said. "It means I was wrong." Sometimes the simplest words are the ones you have to grow into saying. I put my hand to her cheek, the way I did when fevers ran hot. "Thank you," I said. I didn't say I forgive you. Forgiveness is a house. You don't move into it the minute the paint's on sale. You walk the rooms. You see where the light falls. When I got back to Cypress Grove, the lobby was quiet, and the security guard waved me through like I belonged to the building. I did. In my apartment, I put the leftover pie in the fridge, washed my hands, and stood on the balcony a while. The camellias were dark shapes against the night. Somewhere beyond them, a siren Dopplered down veterans. Inside, my phone lit up with a message from Naomi. "Thank you for coming. Good night, Mama." I typed back, "Good night, baby." Then I turned the phone face down and sat with the silence like it was a friend. The next weeks did not become a parade of perfection. Naomi called, then missed a week, then called again. Sometimes she asked me questions about Cypress Grove that sounded like curiosity dressed up in concern. Sometimes she told me about work and Miles and the way married life felt both new and ordinary. Once she asked me for a gumbo recipe, and I told her the secret was not skimming too much fat and letting the roux go darker than you think is sensible. Twice she asked for help shopping for curtains, and I said yes the second time. On a Sunday afternoon, when clouds stacked like laundry baskets over the river, Naomi visited alone. We sat in the sewing room because I had promised the ladies I would show Naomi how to blind stitch a hem. And if there is one thing I am, it is a woman who keeps her promises to the women who keep her. Naomi looked around at the tidy drawers and the neat machines and said, "I didn't know places like this existed." "Places where old folks have lives?" I teased. She winced. "I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant," I said, smiling. "It's okay. I didn't know either." She watched my hands work. "How long did it take you to sew my prom dress?" "All night," I said. "You slept through my pinpricks, and the radio played slow songs till 3. She put her hand over mine. "Thank you," she whispered, but I knew she was talking to 2006 as much as to me. Before she left, Naomi asked me if I wanted to come to dinner with Miles's parents. I looked at my calendar. The block for that evening had "Bingo with Thelma" written in big letters. "I can come next week," I said. "Bingo owes me 3/4. Naomi laughed and rolled her eyes the way teenagers do. "Okay, Miss Bingo. Next week." When dinner with the LeBlancs finally happened, it was at a restaurant where the butter looks like sculpture and the waiters speak in voices that glide. Meredith wore a silk scarf so soft it seemed like it had opinions. Charles pulled out my chair. We ordered things that came in portions meant to be enjoyed with poetry. We talked carefully, as people do when they're laying bricks thin as crackers across a gap. No one tried too hard. No one minimized. After dessert, Meredith touched my wrist. "I misjudged you," she said. "I'm sorry." "I misjudged you too," I said. "I thought you wouldn't understand that love looks different where I come from." "Maybe I didn't," she said, a little smile admitting more truth than the sentence did. "Maybe I'm learning." On the ride home, I watched Uptown roll by, oak limbs reaching over the street like they were blessing cars as they passed. I didn't expect that dinner to fix anything. Fixing isn't a verb that belongs to what happened. But it sanded down a sharp edge, and in this world, I'll take that. A month after the wedding I hadn't attended, Naomi called to say she wanted to come with me to the chapel at Cypress Grove. "I think I should talk to God in a place where you talk to Him," she said. We sat side by side on a weekday morning while Mr. Lionel's grandson tuned the piano for Wednesday hymns. Naomi bowed her head, and I watched her shoulders rise and fall, the way I did when she was a sleeping baby and I needed to be sure her chest was moving. When she finished, she looked at me like a person who has found a handrail in the dark. "I don't know how to earn back your trust," she said quietly. "You don't," I said. "You build forward, brick by brick. Some days you'll lay 3. Some days the rain's gonna take 2 back." She nodded. "Can I call more? Not to ask for forgiveness, just to be?" "You can," I said. And then I told her which hours were best, because boundaries are not walls. They are gates that swing on good hinges. The day I taught Naomi how to blind stitch, Miss Odette watched her practice and clucked approval. "Girl's got a hand," she said. "Keep her at it." I smiled and thought, so do I. 6 months later, I woke to the sound of a mockingbird murdering 3 other songs at once and realized I'd slept through the night without waking to check whether my phone had anything from Naomi. Peace is sometimes quiet, and sometimes it is the absence of a compulsion. I stretched, put on my robe, and stepped onto the balcony. The camellias were blooming shamelessly. A groundsman waved. I waved back and breathed in a morning that belonged to me. That week was busy in the way my best weeks are now. Monday's chair yoga was followed by a walk past the koi pond and a long talk with Miss Thelma about how to tell a good cobbler from a great one. Tuesday, I beat Mr. Lionel at dominoes so clean he looked under the table for cheating and then kissed his teeth in admiration. Wednesday, sewing circle argued about whether French seams were worth the fuss. They are. Thursday, I danced until my knees told me I was 68 and my spirit told my knees to hush. Friday, we rode over to a crafts market in Mandeville, and I bought a small watercolor of the lake that I hung near the door. On Saturday morning, Naomi called to ask if she could bring me to breakfast. "Just us, Mama, no one else." She picked me up at 9 in a car she and Miles bought secondhand, but polished until it glowed. We went to a cafe in Lakeview where the biscuits are tall enough to cast a shadow. We talked for 2 hours about things that ranged from the sublime, why some hymns make us cry, to the ridiculous, why Miles needs 6 kinds of hot sauce. She told me she had started volunteering with a group that tutors middle schoolers in math. I told her I had convinced Mr. Lionel to let us teach his grandson to stitch a crooked line because every boy needs to know how to mend what he tears. We looked like any mother and daughter talking on an ordinary morning, which is its own miracle after you have survived a storm. At the end of breakfast, Naomi reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. My name was on it in her neat, careful script. She pushed it toward me. "This is not for you to read today," she said. "It's for Miss Nyen's file. You can read it if you want, but you don't have to. I needed to put it down." I slid the envelope into my bag and pressed my palm flat on it for a second, like a blessing. "Thank you," I said, and deliberately changed the subject to biscuits, because sometimes the holiest thing you can do is let a thing be what it is without fussing it. 2 days later, I took a streetcar downtown, walked into Nguyen and Roche, and left the envelope with Miss Nguyen. She looked at me over her glasses, understanding without me saying. "Would you like a copy?" she asked. "No," I said, "not now." Back at Cypress Grove, life kept doing what life does. Miss Odette fell and bruised her hip, and we all took turns bringing her dinner. Mr. Lionel's grandson got himself into a little trouble, and we got him out through a combination of love and stern voices. The sewing circle made a quilt together, 1 square per woman, our names signed in tiny stitches, and we hung it in the common room like a soft flag. On Sundays, I went to the chapel and prayed for people I don't even like, because I am trying to be the kind of woman older women taught me to be. Naomi visited on Wednesdays now, because that's what fit, and sometimes she joined the sewing circle. "You're improving," Miss Odette told her a month in, which is like getting a medal. When Naomi missed a week, she texted early to say so. When she came, she brought something that smelled like her house: vanilla, lemons, something expensive I don't need. She did not bring explanations like party favors, which is how I knew we were building something solid. At Thanksgiving, Naomi asked if I would come to their place for dinner, early, just us, then we'll go to the LeBlancs. I said yes. She planned the menu with my help and did most of the cooking herself. The turkey was juicy enough to make a man reconsider all his sins. The dressing needed more sage, which I said because it was true, and Naomi laughed and sprinkled green flecks like forgiveness. We ate at her small table. After, she pulled out a box and set it where dessert should have been. "This is some of your things from storage," she said. "Only the ones I thought you'd want to keep near. If it's too much, we can put them back." Inside were 3 items: the prom dress, now a little faded at the seams, the lakefront photo, and the letter she wrote me when she was 12, apologizing for lying about a grade. "I wanted you to have them," she said quietly, "because who I am didn't start yesterday." I touched the frame, the dress, the paper. "Thank you," I said, and this time the words carried the weight of both of us. Not everything was tender. There were days Naomi slipped into old habits, going silent when stressed, answering with a prepackaged line about what's convenient. There were days I wanted to lecture like a woman who has learned her lessons hard and thinks everyone else should accept them whole. On those days, we told the truth and waited for the weather to change. It did. The week before Christmas, Naomi asked if I would have coffee with Meredith, just the two of us. She wants to try again, Naomi said, without making me the interpreter. We met at a hotel that smells like money and flowers, sat in a corner, and let the fountain speak when we didn't want to. Meredith went first. My mother didn't want me to marry Charles, she said, looking down at her cup. She thought he wasn't enough. She gave a short laugh. Sometimes I think I've been trying to prove her wrong for 37 years. Sometimes we repeat what hurt us just on other people, I said, and felt Daniel nod somewhere. I am sorry, she said again, for assuming easy was kinder than right. We're all learning how to be people, I said. It's a job they don't train you for. We finished our coffee. We stood, shook hands like ladies, and hugged like aunts, and went our separate ways. I walked out into the bright cold and bought myself a new scarf, red as cayenne, because at 68, I am a woman who buys herself pretty things for no reason needed. On New Year's Eve, Cypress Grove threw a dance that would have put some weddings to shame. We dressed in sparkles and wore ridiculous hats. Mr. Lionel asked me to dance, and I said yes, because yes is a word that deserves use. At midnight, we counted down loud as children and kissed the air and banged pots with wooden spoons. My phone buzzed with a message from Naomi. Happy New Year, Mama. Thank you for staying. I texted back. Happy New Year, baby. Thank you for showing up. Spring came early, as it does. The camellias dropped their petals like small flags surrendering to heat. In March, Naomi called and said, cautious, Mama, I want to plan a real ceremony. Not a big one, not a show. A vow renewal with a blessing. I want you there. I want you to hold my bouquet while I fix my hair and tell me I'm standing crooked. I want you to stand with me. Please say yes. I thought of the chapel at Cypress Grove and the vows we make there to be kinder tomorrow than we were yesterday. I thought of the first wedding on that tight-framed photo and the way absence can ring louder than a bell. I thought of Naomi at 5 in a borrowed veil she fashioned from a pillowcase, asking me to marry her to a teddy bear. Yes, I said, one condition. She held her breath. Anything. We do it here, I said, at Cypress Grove, in the courtyard, with lemonade and cake and 2 songs. One for you and Miles, and one for me and you. Naomi laughed and cried at the same time, which is what my daughter does when the world is too much and just enough. Done, she said. The day of the ceremony, the courtyard looked like a dream had tidied itself up. Patrice strung lights, and Miss Thelma brought her best punch, and Mr. Lionel set up chairs straight enough to make a Marine proud. Naomi wore a simple dress, white as forgiveness. Miles looked like a man who'd learned how to say, I'm sorry, without choking on it. A small group gathered, Cypress Grove folks, a couple of Naomi's friends, the LeBlancs standing in the second row holding hands like they trained to do it. I stood at Naomi's side while she fussed with her hairpiece. Am I straight? She asked, and I rearranged her like I had in 100 church bathrooms. When the minister asked who stands with this bride, I didn't say her mother. I said I do, and felt the phrase sink into the ground like a promise. After the vows, After the cake that Miss Odette baked and decorated with sugar camellias, after Mr. Lionel tried to waltz and ended up inventing something better, Naomi and I stood under the live oak while the second song started, soft and familiar, the one we danced to at her 16th, the one I hummed when fevers rose. "May I have this dance?" she asked, and this time I let her lead. We moved slow. Around us, people talked and laughed in that layered way New Orleans loves. Over Naomi's shoulder, I saw Meredith crying and not bothering to dab. I saw Miles watching with something like gratitude and something like humility. I saw Patrice leaning on the door jamb, smiling with the satisfaction only women who've watched other women come back to themselves can feel. When the song ended, Naomi kissed my cheek. "Thank you for not walking away," she whispered. "I'm learning how to not make you wish you had." I squeezed her hand. "Me too," I said, learning. That night, my apartment was full of flowers, of leftover cake, of music still vibrating in the bones of the building. I took off my shoes, set the bouquet in a jar, and sat on the balcony until the night and I were old friends again. Here is what I learned and what I want to hand you like a folded note in church. There comes a day when you must decide that your dignity is not a thing your children can borrow and forget to return. There comes a day when you understand that love without respect is just longing with good manners. There comes a day when you realize that walking away is not the only way to save yourself. You can also stay, but change the terms under which you're present. Naomi's first wedding did not have me in the frame. The life we are building does. Not every story arrives at a tidy fairy tale. Mine arrived at something better. A life where I belong to myself and a family where I am not a ghost. If you listened all the way through, thank you. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from. I read every one. If you liked the story, please give it a like and subscribe. It helps me keep bringing you more life stories. I'll see you in the next one with love and respect.